Okay, so today we dive into the next text. We've already talked about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and now we're going to go into the Bhagavad Gita. And this is an amazing, epic story of good versus evil. So Bhagavad Gita literally is translated as the Song of God. And Maha, remember we've talked about this word a few times now. What does Maha mean? Remember Mahatma Gandhi? Maha is great. Atma, soul. So Mahatma is the great soul Gandhi. Now Mahabharata means the great story of Bharata. And Bharata was the old name, the original name of India. Remember how big India was? It stretched all the way from Singapore to Afghanistan. It was a massive part of the world. And this is the tale, the greatest tale ever written by man, the longest book ever written by any human being. So, as we said, Bharata was Afghanistan to Singapore. This was India. And this whole epic story is written in the form of a poem. Now, think about the mastery of language that this would require, because each line has a perfect number of couplets, 16 couplets. A couplet is a way to measure the rhythm of a poem. And so this, the longest book ever written by man, is in a poem where every line has 16 couplets. So this is incredible mastery. This was an enlightened being who downloaded this information from the source. We are told that this is a universal love song sung by God to the humans to help guide us on this journey. Now, this was written by Vyasa around 6,000 years ago. We know we have a hard time definitely knowing exactly when these things were written, but this one is more accurate, they think, than the knowledge of when Patanjali wrote the Yoga Sutras. There's a big range of when Patanjali could have written the sutras, about 2,500 years of range. This one is pretty accurate to say about 6,000 years ago. So within the Mahabharata is one section called the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is 700 couplets out of these poetry, lines of poetry, and it's right in the middle of the Mahabharata. Now in the 60s, this was the highest selling book in the world. So this isn't something that just the yogis showed interest in. The whole world at one point understood, or at least many people around the world understood, that this is one of the greatest teachings ever given to humankind. And it's also given by the divine to the humans through these epic masters. So, as I was saying, this is an epic battle. Now, what we have, in the old days, there were rules to battles that we don't have now. So there was a very specific time and a very specific place that the battle was going to take place, on a specific field. So the day before the battle is about to start, we have the protagonist, the main character of the story. His name is Arjuna. And Arjuna is the greatest warrior on his side, on his army. And he's about to go fight this battle against his own family, his own teachers, his own kinsmen, and the people that he grew up with. Because what happened was that the king, basically to make this long story short, so that we don't go too much into the history, the understanding is that the king died, and now there was, of course, a battle from the relatives over who would take over the throne. And what we could call the bad guys decided that they were going to take over the throne, and they're not going to give it back to the rightful heirs, the rightful owners, the people who were the descendants of the king. So there's a battle. And the night before the battle, Arjuna, the greatest warrior on his side, tells Krishna, remember we talked about Krishna, he's the avatar, the divine incarnation, manifest in the human form. So Arjuna gets Krishna to be his charioteer, who's going to drive his chariot or his wagon into battle. And he asks him to take him to the battlefield the night before the battle is about to start. So there's two armies, one on this side, let's say this is the middle line, and then there's another army over here. And they're all getting ready, and the next morning will be the battle. So everybody's on the field already ready to go. And Arjuna asks Krishna to take him to the center of the field so that he can survey what's about to happen. And he looks across at the other side, and he sees his relatives, he sees his teachers, he sees his friends. Because what had happened was the whole kingdom had been divided in half, depending on who you were supporting. So those who were in the family line of the king who had passed, obviously they were called the Pandavas. So the Pandavas were considered the righteous, and the opposite side was considered the evil. And this is the story of the good and evil that is eternal. Now, it seems like an epic battle on a battlefield, but all of this is, of course, symbolic, and it has a deeper meaning than just going to battle for a kingdom. Arjuna was considered the great warrior. Krishna is the avatar and the king. He was a warrior king. And the ancient spiritual text is taught by Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield. So as Arjuna goes and surveys the fact that he's about to go into war with people that he loves, he says to himself, I can't do this. This isn't right. Why should I go kill these people that helped me throughout my life? And this is where the story takes place. Arjuna asks Krishna to guide him, and Krishna starts to teach him about Dharma and about how to fulfill our role in this life. And that's the real tale of the Bhagavad Gita, using the battlefield as the context for how we fight this battle within ourselves. Because we all have this higher spiritual aspiration. We all have this understanding that we can fulfill our human potential. But we also have our lower nature. We could say our animal nature, our instincts and our desires that bring us off the path that leads us to our highest potential. So every day and in every moment, there's almost a dichotomy. There is a dichotomy, a duality within us, and we are constantly making decisions in each moment of which direction to take. And this is the battle that has to be fought. Because if we want to step into our highest potential, then we need to transcend these lower desires that are keeping us at the instinctual, animalistic level. So the first word of this entire book is called dharma. And we've heard this word before. Dharma is a very important word. What does it mean? I've said it a few times. We'll go into it again. But what do you remember about dharma, which I've said so far? Your purpose in life. Good. It's excellent translation. Another way could be nature. Everybody has their dharma, their nature, their natural role in life. We are all brought into this big picture to fulfill one part, one role out of this infinite screen of which we're all a part. So the last word is mama, or my. So the whole story is about my dharma. And how do I find what is my path in life? So how do I uplift myself, but also all of the world around me? And this is part of the understanding of what dharma is. It's not just about fulfilling your egotistical needs about what you want. We all need a home, we all need to eat. Of course, these things are a natural part of our life. However, what we do to also lift up the world around us is a very important aspect of finding our dharma. Because if it's only about me, then it's not really your dharma. That's just this selfish, egotistical perspective about how to serve your wants and needs. So this is a deeper meaning that your dharma, everybody has a way to serve humanity. And it may be something that you haven't discovered yet, but this teaching is helping us to understand, how do we find out what our dharma is? Now, according to Krishna, he tells Arjuna, yoga is not just something you do on a yoga mat. In fact, nobody was really doing asana the day before the battle. This is the art of living, the art of life. And yoga is the state where even the worst tragedy does not disturb your inner peace. So the understanding that equanimity, or to be stable no matter what the external circumstances are, this is one of the great teachings of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. To know your dharma and to find out what that is. Basically, this is the most important part of our journey. Until we find out what it is, then we start fulfilling that role. But if you don't know why you're here, how do you make your decisions in life? How do you know which direction to go into? So this is, according to the teaching here, and in my own experience, this was the top priority. If I don't answer this question for myself soon, I am not going to be able to know what I should be doing with myself. So many people don't know their dharma, and this is why you see a lot of people struggling. Because they don't know why they're here. They feel like they're not leading a fulfilled life, that they're not fulfilling their potential. Now, those who do know their dharma, many of them don't have the courage to follow it. So maybe you're born with this artistic capacity, yet your parents say you should become a doctor, so you follow in the family tradition, you become a doctor, but your heart is calling out to be an artist. Your heart wants to express itself through this magical medium of art, and you are not listening to your call of the soul. So this is what happens in a lot of people's lives, and this is why there is a certain amount of feeling of desperation, because we know, something inside of us knows when we're not following our dharma, and you can feel it. So the path to becoming your own best self and to benefit all around you, this is the teaching of how to follow that path. Now, Krishna says it's our responsibility. Now, a lot of the yoga things that I've already mentioned come from this Bhagavad Gita. A lot of the understanding that I have about yoga comes from this text. And he says it's our responsibility to take our lives into our own hands. As we've said, you can be your best friend or your worst enemy. But what the Bhagavad Gita does is it addresses practically every aspect of your life, from the small details to the big picture. So this is a very different teaching than the Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras, although we didn't go into the whole depth of the whole book, we did cover the yamas and the niyamas and the Ashtanga 8-limb path, and the whole science of the Yoga Sutras is really about the psychology of the mind, how to work with the mind. This, on the other hand, is like an instruction manual for everything in your life, like what is your job supposed to be? What kind of family life should you have? What is your spiritual path? So this is a more comprehensive teaching that gets into the bigger picture, and this is great for us because the Yoga Sutras, while they're very practical for working with the mind, they don't tell us much else about the rest of our lives. So we're lucky that we have at this time access to all these different teachings at the same time in history. So it's the mind-body system is literally the battlefield where the forces of light and darkness are constantly at war. Now that seems like an extreme statement, and in a way it is, it's an exaggeration, but you know each day you have a choice. I can get up and I can go to yoga class, or I can stay in bed and sleep for another 2 hours, which would be very nice, and I'd enjoy it and I'd feel really good. But I made a commitment to be here. I made a decision that this was part of my path of growth, so I'm going to stick to my commitment to myself and to the other people involved. So each moment we have this possibility of choosing what lifts us up or choosing what can bring us back towards the animalistic tendencies. So the soul is what's wearing the body. It's the soul that's continuing the journey. The soul, and again, make sure you understand this. Got to make sure you understand this. Okay, what is Atman? Soul. So your soul is never changing. I've said this before, but I want to recycle it. Your Jivatman.
Individual.
Very good. Your Jivatman or your Jiva, that is your individual soul, your individual reflection of the universal consciousness. That's why each of us has a unique individuality based on our Jiva, based on our karmic package that has brought us into this life. So the Atman is wearing the body, and the Atman is what continues to experience these different incarnations. Now, if we look at the symbolism, going deeper into the understanding, Krishna is yoga or union, and Arjuna is action. So what the yogis say is we should never be passive. Yoga is an active way of living. It's not about just sitting in a cave meditating and trying to go into samadhi or realization. We have to act in this world because we are alive in a physical body. So when you bring these two together, you have success, wealth, health, and peace. And these four things are considered some of the most important parts of the human experience. Yoga was very practical, okay? It wasn't only about spirituality. It also helped us to understand how to live in the physical body in this world. And they say that we all have the right to happiness. We all have the right to wealth. We all have the right to fulfill our sensual pleasures, our desires, kama, from Kama Sutra. And we all have the right to have peace. So the life is that the internal battle. Now, who here feels like they have to struggle with themselves? Right? We all have to struggle with ourselves because it's very easy to relax into a place of complacency and slowly, day by day, fall further and further away from what our real intention is. So this is the struggle for our mind, body, and spirit. And basically they say that the enemies, the most powerful enemies that we have are our anger, our greed, our desire, etc. So all I'm trying to get you to do with these teachings, guys, is to understand that this is something that we become aware of, and once we have the awareness of it, then we have the ability to transcend these things. But if we haven't even thought of the fact that there is a duality within us, a light and a dark, then we're just run by the program again. So this is the life of conscious action. Krishna says that those who teach this path are the dearest to him. So this means that all of you who are becoming yoga teachers, according to Krishna, who's a divine manifestation in the physical form, he says those that teach this information, this teachings of Bhagavad Gita and the yogic path, those are dearest to this deity or divine being. So we step into a certain role as a yoga teacher because we know that this is an incredibly powerful science and has the ability to transform lives. This is what makes teaching yoga more than just exercise. And once you step on the mat, and some of you have already had the experience, you can feel that there's something going on that's greater than just your ego when you're in front of a yoga class, for most of us. So, this is how to know the self, the highest self, the capital S, your body, mind, and soul. So we transcend the mortality and attachment to the physical world by knowing the self, knowing the Atman, knowing that you are that eternal, blissful being. Now, the knowledge is one thing, but the experience through the meditation is what helps you to really have this be your own understanding rather than just a teacher or a book telling you. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is broken down into 18 separate chapters. The first 6 chapters are about how to know your true self, how to perform your duties, how to find out what your dharma is, your natural duty. The second 6 chapters are talking about what is the actual nature of the divine and what is it like to live for devotion to divinity. And the last 6 chapters, knowledge and wisdom for liberation from suffering and how to merge with the divine. So these 3 different categories are taking you deeper into first knowing yourself and then merging with your highest self. Now, this is what I really want to talk about today. Karma yoga. Karma yoga is often translated as the yoga of action, and often in the modern world we could translate karma yoga as selfless action. We're very fortunate. We are here for a month in Thailand doing a yoga training course. Most of the people in the world will never have this opportunity. How do we continue to focus on our spiritual path if we don't have the ability to do yoga on a mat? Well, according to Karma Yoga, if you do your actions with a certain understanding, with a certain intention, you can create a positive influence in the world. And how do we do this? This is through the science of Karma Yoga, and it's called acting without selfish desire. It's detachment. This word comes up so much in yoga and Buddhism because of the importance of understanding that it's attachment that causes a lot of our suffering. So you look at the quote today, if you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. Everything is changing, so we cultivate the sense of detachment, understanding that everything is coming is also going. And if we can cultivate the detachment, then we can start to also diminish our own suffering, because when we're holding on and it goes, that's when we get sad. So, Karma Yoga is the idea of whatever you do that is beneficial, you do to the best of your ability, and then you let go of the attachment to the fruits of the action. So we go to work. Why do you go to work?
Provide.
What's that?
To provide.
To provide. We need to get something from our work to feed ourselves and perhaps our family and take care of those people that are close to us. Well, the idea of Karma Yoga is to do what you need to do without any expectation of anything in return, because you are the right person in the right place at the right time. It's called acting spontaneously according to the needs of the moment. So just as an example, let's say if you haven't been to India, it's one of the craziest places I've ever been, and you're driving down a road in the Himalayas around winding mountain roads, and the roads are barely wide enough for 2 buses. And here come 2 buses screaming down the roads at each other. And on the top of one bus is 50 Indians because the whole bus is full of another 100 Indians. And on the top are another bunch. And you're driving around the curve and some Indian gets tossed off. You jump and you grab him and you pull him back on. You didn't have a moment to think. You were the only person in the place that had the opportunity to save this person's life. There was no thought. There was no understanding that if I do this, I'm going to get a pat on the back and God will give me a smile because I saved a life. You do what you need to do in the moment because you're the right person to do it and you have the ability to do it. And as soon as you're done doing it, you wash your hands of it, and whatever happens, the universe takes care of the rest. You are an agent. You are a channel for the universal energy to flow through you. When we can diminish the limitations of the ego, we can step into this role of being a pure channel for spontaneity to happen through us. So rather than having to calculate what is it that I'm going to get out of this action, you do what you have to do because it's the right thing to do. That's what karma yoga really is. And in the modern day, this has been manipulated a little bit. If you go to ashrams in India, every day you have to do karma yoga, which is actually contrary to the whole understanding. Karma yoga is something you do voluntarily because you want to serve. So if you go to an ashram and they're forcing you to clean the toilets and that's absolutely the thing that you hate to do and you would rather do anything besides that, and I say this because I've done it, it's a different feeling than if you set the intention to serve others from your own motivation than someone telling you you have to do this and do it without any expectation for any reward. That's not quite karma yoga. So what I want to encourage you to understand is that by serving others, we lift up ourselves. Okay? By lifting up ourselves, as we know, we're all connected, so we're serving humanity. Now this understanding guides you a little bit deeper. By serving others, they say that this is the path to samadhi. By serving others, this is one of the easiest ways to reach the highest state of consciousness. Because the more that you serve others, the more that you look deeply into the eyes of another, the more you see that we are all the same. And tomorrow we're going to do an activity together that helps us to see the connection between ourselves. Now, through selfless service, through lifting others up, as we talked about, it also helps you. Who was it who brought up? Well, any good deed is also going to make you feel good. So it's also, you have that awareness. That's okay. It's a win-win situation. As long as you are doing this for the benefit of the people that you are serving, you always will have certain feelings of satisfaction because you've served another human being. But karma yoga is something that is often overlooked in our modern yoga system. Okay? It's all about me and my yoga mat and how flexible I am and can I nail this handstand and am I good enough to be a yoga teacher? And it all becomes a very self-centered project, actually. And this is a great obstacle on the path to elevating and transcending the ego's limitations. So karma yoga, getting outside of ourselves and seeing that how blessed we are and we have the opportunity and really we have the responsibility to help others who are less fortunate than us. If you're here for a month in Thailand, you're one of the luckiest people in the world. Really. You have to be one of the luckiest people in the world to spend a whole month here not working, enjoying beautiful food, doing yoga, and have the freedom to do this. So we have a responsibility to help those that don't have this freedom. And how do we do that? That's up to you. It's your choice. Nobody's telling you, there's no guideline that says you have to go do volunteer work X number of hours each week. It's more about an intention in your life. And every moment when you have the opportunity, you help others. So let's just say you're crossing the street and grandma's there by herself and she's having a walker and having a hard time. You could run across the street and get to your next appointment, or you can help someone who needs help. Sometimes just a smile is all you need to give to lighten someone's day, or a hug, or a positive word. But having this awareness that you and all of us who are so fortunate really do have this responsibility to lifting those others up. Because at the deeper level, once you see that everyone is you, wouldn't you want to lift yourself up if you were down? Once you see that you are connected to everybody else, then the more you lift them up, the more you lift yourself up. So really, it's an amazing process, this selfless service. And how do we do this? Well, we perform the actions as a worship of the divine. We're doing this because we see that everyone is God. Now, this is according to the teaching. You don't have to do it, but this is what the teaching tells us. When you see that everybody is divine, how would you treat God? Even if God was a beggar on the street who was very dirty and smelly and looked horrible, but if everything in this universe is a manifestation of the divine, every particle, according to yoga, there is nothing that is not God. Not one particle, not even the stuff that looks the worst, feels the worst, sounds the worst. According to yoga, everything in this universe is divine. So if you look out around you, how would you treat God? If everybody is looking back at you is the divine, how would you treat the people that you see? Gandhi had a beautiful statement. He said, if you cannot see God in the eyes of the next person you meet, there's no need to look any further because it's already there. It's already in front of you. So I encourage us all to try to make this a part of our lives. We don't necessarily have the opportunity to do something every day, but at least think about trying to do something once a month or once a year at least to get out of your selfish driven world, which is what most of us have, and there's nothing wrong with this. We need to be selfish to a certain level, but to go beyond that level. So what he then goes on to teach us is there's different paths of yoga. The beauty is there's not one size fits all, as we know. I said the other day, this Romanian proverb, the eagle fights with its talons and the bull fights with its horns. We use the strength that we've been given. We use the talents that we have to propel ourselves through this evolutionary process. So there are different forms of yoga depending on the different temperaments, which is good because not everybody's the same. So we have what we consider the four main paths of yoga. The first one is, how do we say this word? Jnana. Either jnana or jnana. Both are good, okay? Jnana or jnana, this is the yoga of knowledge. This is what one of the famous masters from the last century, Ramana Maharshi, he was a jnana yogi, and he said, all you need to ask yourself is this one question. What is the one question we need to ask ourselves? Who am I? Right, who am I? And that was his teaching. Go into the heart center, bring your awareness into this space and continually ask, who am I? And eventually this knowledge will arise once we quiet the mind down enough. So this is the awareness now of the difference between the body and soul. And this is what's called viveka. Viveka means, let's go back up here. Viveka means discernment. And for those who are not first language speakers of English, discernment means being able to clearly define the difference between two things, between right and wrong. And here we're talking about discernment to understand the difference between the body and the soul. Now, this comes about with discrimination, with seeing things clearly, with the ability to use the mind to perceive reality. However, we know the mind is tricky and it likes to play tricks and do the monkey thing. So this is a very challenging path, and very few people in this world actually go down the Jnana Yoga path because it's for the most intellectually advanced. So for most people, this path of just focusing on the mind is extremely challenging. The easier path, according to yoga, is what's bhakti yoga. This is the yoga of devotion, the yoga where we approach the divine through the heart, through chanting, through singing, through dance, through music, through prayer. This is very different. You don't need to use so much intellectual capacity. You have a certain aspiration, you have a certain openness of the heart where you feel love of the divine without anybody ever having to teach it to you. You just are in love with the fact that you are alive. And you have this appreciation for the source of your life. So this is Bhakti Yoga, and we have, of course, let's get to the next slide. To know your true self, we'll get to, hang on a sec. Okay, so to know your true self, according to Krishna and Arjuna, let's go back into the story. What Arjuna says to Krishna, what Krishna says to Arjuna is, you have to go into this battle. This is your dharma. This is what you've trained your whole life for. Now here is God in the physical form telling someone to go into battle to kill people. This is very controversial. People think, how could this be a teaching of a spiritual master? Well, what he's teaching is that you have to follow your dharma. If you go against your dharma, that is one of the greatest sins that a human being can commit against themselves. So if this human being who has trained his whole life to be a warrior then gets to the night before the battle and says, I'm not doing it, I don't think this is right, he's actually backing out of fulfilling his role, his mission on this planet. Now, the secret, we'll get back to that in a moment, but he spends the whole night, Arjuna and Krishna, on the battlefield. And Krishna keeps saying, you have to understand, you are in a state of confusion. What are you confused about? You think you are the body. You think you are your mind. You think you are Arjuna, the warrior. The fact is, you are Atman. You are observing this as a movie in the play of your consciousness. So remember, you are the actor playing Hamlet. You are not Hamlet. And when this battle is over, even if you have died or killed others, it will not impact your soul. Your soul is never changing. You are always perfect, always blissful. So this is trying to come back to the understanding again that you are not the body or mind. And how do we do this? Well, we can do this through the path of karma yoga. We can do this through bhakti yoga and jnana yoga, having this ability to discern the difference between the body and the soul. Now, I saw a hand pop up.
What about karma then? If you don't fight and kill people and it won't affect your soul, but it will affect your karma, so what's the balance?
So he's asking about his karma. How does that affect the karma? Maybe your soul is not impacted by the fact that you're killing people, but here's a warrior who's going into battlefield. His karma has brought him into the role of being a warrior, and his dharma is to be on this battlefield. So he's fulfilling his dharma, actually, which is a way to create positive karma rather than negative karma. Now, taking the life of another, we think, how could that be a positive thing? Because if you are in the place that has the opportunity to stand for righteousness and you do not stand up for what is right, that is also creating negative karma. So if standing up for what is right means fighting a battle and even killing others that will, in the big picture, benefit humanity, then that's the right thing for that warrior to do.
So it's kind of relative?
Exactly. Yep.
Isn't the part of karma also free will? That you have a choice to make it, even if you're a warrior, you have a choice to not kill.
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of our free will. We have a choice to fulfill our dharma or not to fulfill our dharma. The other big choice we have, according to yoga in the Bhagavad Gita, is the choice to seek out the divine and open up our spiritual life, or the choice to stay totally focused on the material world. So yes, we do have free will, but choosing not to follow your dharma, according to these teachings, is really one of the greatest sins, and this is actually a word that's used against yourself, because you're not fulfilling your role.
So if we're not, if we don't have that luxury of having Krishna to tell us this is actually
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do,
Yes.
what then would be, I'm not trying to be annoying.
No, this is a great question.
What then would be
I-
our compass of like,
Yeah.
we're about to do things that are controversial to
Mhm.
us, that it could hurt people that we love, but how do we know then that this is what's meant to happen?
This is an excellent question. Do you think you have an answer for this question?
No, but you're a philosophy teacher, so I'm hoping you might.
Okay. The greatest way to understand ourselves is through the practice of yoga, through our meditation, through quieting the mind, through accessing our intuition. And so this is a life journey of developing the skills to be able to find the answers within. So if I need to find a compass or a guide that's going to help me make the right decision in each moment, the best guide I have is my internal intuition, my internal guide. So all of this bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga, it's purifying our consciousness so that we can perceive these teachings from within ourselves. Now, until we have that ability, life will keep giving us challenges that will guide us to a place where we realize that we need to look within. And we'll get the same lesson again and again and again until we find a solution. We find a different path to find a way out of whatever it is that is challenging us. So this is part of the journey of being challenged again and again and again, looking outside for answers continually until you realize that I'm not finding anything out there that's giving me what I need. And then you start to go into the internal journey. Okay? But until that point happens, you and all of us have an opportunity to just do our practice, to find the stability and the clarity of mind through our daily meditations, pranayamas, and asanas. And this will give us a much better foundation to make our decisions from than if we don't do our practice, if we don't focus on our internal awareness, if we don't go into meditation to find that stillness and that ability to access the intuition. Okay, so each day we have a choice. Am I doing my practice that brings me towards greater clarity, or am I doing the other things that take me into confusion? Okay, yes?
But then you're saying like every warrior
Okay, so when we go into this topic, we're going to get all these what about, what if situations. Even Hitler, according to these teachings, played a role in this infinite universe that had to be played for humanity to learn the lessons that needed to be learned. There's not one grain of sand out of place in this whole universe. There's not one accident. Hitler wasn't a mistake.
Wait, what about Donald Trump?
That's a mistake. I apologize from America to the world. It's a big mistake.
The good can exist without evil.
Guys, we live in duality. No matter how much beauty there is, there's going to be an equal amount of darkness. And with that darkness, we appreciate the beauty. Until we get to a place that transcends this level of consciousness where duality exists, we will always experience light and dark. So this is part of the game, the Leela, the drama of life, that according to the teachings, the divine had created this for the divine to experience life, literally, in the physical form. So within this drama, there has to be the evil criminal and there has to be the hero. So this is part of what we are learning about acceptance, that even though it seems really awful, the suffering, that suffering is a necessary part of our evolutionary process. It helps us to wake up. It helps us to love more. It helps us to ask deeper questions. It helps us to go inside to find a way to deal with the challenges of our own emotions and mind. So these are all catalysts for helping us to go into greater understanding. And then once we have greater understanding, you start to perceive that everything is connected. And the deeper you go, the more you begin to realize that all of these things that are happening for you to come back to that understanding that you are the divine. So everything in your life is propelling you up. As we said yesterday, the universe is always guiding us up. It's not pushing us down. It's our interpretation, our perspective that is limited, that thinks that we're being pushed down. Okay? Okay. So, what we can do, the secret of selfless action is that it leads to inner peace. Rather than trying to fulfill desire after desire. Remember that analogy? You have an infinite tissue box of desires. You pull up one tissue, one desire. There's another million waiting to be fulfilled. So when we start to let go of the desires, we start to find more peace. And we can substitute thoughts of service or thoughts of how can we benefit humanity or thoughts of the divine instead of our selfish thoughts, our desires for ourselves. So the intention is to unite the heart with the divine, abandon this selfish desire, and that's what leads to the state of bliss. Buddha said the exact same thing. It's the desires that are creating your suffering, that are creating your attachment. So once we get to this perspective, we can start to approach our actions from a different point of view. Rather than what am I going to get out of this opportunity, how can I serve others in this moment? And this is the path of karma yoga. So what we do, and we talked about this, but I really want to go into it deeper today, is consecration. Costa mentioned it a little bit, I talked about it briefly, but consecration is the key, one of the keys I could say, to karma yoga. Consecration and detachment. All right, who can explain to me what a consecration is? Often at the beginning of class, Costa or I will give us a moment to perform a consecration. What is that process doing? Yes. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Did you want to go big?
No, go ahead.
Ladies first.
It's an offering of your practice towards higher being, whether that be the universe or a specific God, instead of practicing for your ego.
Good. So I would take one step further, offering of your practice. It's actually an offering of the fruits of your practice. So we do yoga because I do yoga very often when my ego thinks about it because it makes me feel nice. I want to be healthy. I want to live long. I want to have a nice, healthy body and all those things. So my ego is very much in charge at that point. But if I step onto the mat and before I begin my practice, I offer the fruits of this practice, not to me, but understanding that everything I do in this being radiates out energetically. So by the law of resonance, if I'm changing myself, I can change the world around me. So rather than offering the fruits of this practice to me, I offer it to the universe, to the highest. Whatever that works for you. It doesn't matter, it's your language. But I will take you through a consecration that I usually do in the morning. I have to close my eyes and do it for myself to be there. Now, I consider myself open to a spiritual path, so I use spiritual terms. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, I consecrate the fruits of this day, this life, this breath, this teaching, this opportunity to serve to you, Mother and Father, God and Goddess, Shiva and Shakti, to Christ and the Holy Spirit, to Jesus, Buddha, Babaji, Kuan Yin, and the highest beings, to all the enlightened masters, to all of our guides, teachers, ancestors, and the spirits of this land. I ask for your guidance, compassion, and protection, and I thank you for the opportunity to be a vessel for thy will to be done. May your love, light, energy, wisdom, joy, playfulness, compassion, message, intelligence, may you flow through me, and may this experience be for the highest good for all who are present. And on and on and on. But things like this, to set my intention before I act, to set my understanding of why am I doing this action? Is it for me, or is this something that actually the universe has provided an opportunity for me to be a channel for the universe to flow through me to create a certain opportunity for those who are in this moment, for all of us to share in this opportunity. So this is how I try to start every class. This is how I start each morning. And I can tell you that once you start this process of consecration, if you do it every day, and I do it before I teach, I do it before I eat, I do it right when I wake up. And you can do it anytime you want. But what you start to do is open a dialogue. It's like you are telling the divine, I am offering myself, and I am asking to be guided. May I be a vessel for thy will to be done. And so when you do this, it starts to create a certain feeling, and you can connect to the divine through consecration. So what I do is I focus on the crown chakra, and I do my prayer, my words, and I try to feel the energy of the divine flowing from the crown chakra into my heart center. And then I move from the heart into the action rather than from the mind or the ego. So these are some suggestions. Again, like everything else, I really would like you to try this experiment, maybe for the next, how many days we have left? Wow, 4 or 5 days. Every morning you can do a consecration. But if you do it for about a week or 2 weeks, it's a little bit longer, and you get to start to feeling. In the first few times, maybe you feel like this is weird. Maybe you've never done prayer or talked to the divine. If you haven't, there's no right or wrong. There's nothing you can say that is going to anger the divine. He gets you. He knows what you're thinking anyway, or she knows. So don't worry about trying to hide something from the divine. It's already understanding all the good and all the darkness. It's already there. So as you do this experiment, focus on the crown and focus on the heart. And over the course of time, when I'm consecrating, I feel a response. I feel a connection. I feel an energetic answer, I could say. I don't know that God's talking to me. I'm not trying to say that. I'm not hearing voices. Again, I'm not schizophrenic, even though you probably think I am by all the things that I've told you by now. But I feel a connection. And for me, that's enough. Okay, I don't need any other verification. I don't need somebody else to agree with me. But I know what I feel. And for me, it feels like my heart is opening to the will of the divine. And this is what consecration is. It's offering ourselves in service of the universe rather than in service of ourselves. It's a very powerful practice, because if you start your activities like this, rather than, hey, what am I getting out of it? The way you move into that activity, the energy that you bring into that experience is far different, and especially as a yoga teacher. You know, if I consecrate here and think that this is my opportunity to serve my brothers and sisters, rather than I want to be really cool and get to be a famous yogi and be on Instagram and all that stuff, it's nothing wrong with that. You know, we need famous yogis on Instagram. They inspire us. Good for them. Okay? But it's a different energy that you take into that next action. So all I'm encouraging you is to try this experiment and see how you feel. Okay? You don't have to even believe in God. Just offer it to the universe. Just offer it to the highest good of humanity. We're all humans. We know we exist, so there's really no debating that one. Monica. Actually, let me stop you right there. You don't offer a consecration to be anything. You don't offer it to get anything, to do anything. You offer the fruits because you want to let go of your attachment to your action, to the fruits of your actions. You want to let go of holding on to any expectations. So all you're doing is offering, not to get anything, not to be anything, not to receive anything, not to improve yourself, not to change yourself. It's just to let go and give back. It's a continual surrender. And this is one of the biggest concepts that comes up as we go into these teachings, is this idea of these opposite yet seemingly contradictory paths, but they actually go together hand in hand. And it's the path of will versus the path of surrender. Well, what Bhagavad Gita says is we have to have will. You have to act. You need to do your dharma. That's your responsibility. But when you do that and you use your will, you surrender the fruits of the action. You just let the universe flow through you. Now, we talked yesterday about the gunas, right? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. This is part of the understanding of the composition of the universe, that everything in the universe has these energies in different proportions, including us. So when we're connecting to these different energies, we want to go into the sattvic, because this is going to propel us into a greater understanding, as we talked about a little bit yesterday, of this idea that prakriti is what? You had it in Ayurveda, but it's also a bigger picture. Your prakriti is your nature. It's like your nature. It's what you're born with, your typology. But prakriti in the bigger sense means nature of the universe, the manifest world that you see, the nature, okay? Versus Purusha. And Purusha would be called the transcendent or the divine. Now, one of the symbols for explaining the universe out of yoga and other systems, that's not a very good drawing, but it's supposed to be egg shape, okay? So within this universe, everything that exists as prakriti, as nature, is also the divine. And this is the teaching again. So you get the same teaching from Yoga Sutras, you get the same teaching from the Bhagavad Gita, you get the same teaching from all these different masters from around the world, not even just yogis, saying that everything that exists is a manifestation of the divine, and everything that is manifested is also part of and governed by this cosmic consciousness. Now, what we can do is dedicate our life to the welfare of all humanity. We look at the great beings like the Gandhis, the Mother Teresas, the people that have sacrificed their lives to help others. And we all think how amazing they are, yes? We look up to them. But are we doing that? We think that they are some of the highest beings. How much are we sacrificing? How much are we letting go of what we feel is important for my ego so that I can turn my life into a life of service? You know, before I became a teacher, I was working in an office doing international sales and bored out of my mind. And I felt totally unfulfilled because all I was doing was working for a paycheck. That's all. I didn't care about what I was selling. I was literally selling Reef Brazil sandals. You know Reef sandals? Made in Argentina actually, but they're called Reef Brazil. So it was a great company, right? We got to surf on the breaks. We got to go to the beach when the waves were good because it was, you know, a couple surfers who owned the company. But other than getting money out of that job, I didn't feel like I was actually doing anything to help anybody. So I felt very disillusioned with my life. I thought, is this all I'm going to do with the rest of my life? Go to work to get a paycheck, to do a job that I really have no interest in at all. And I started looking, what is it that I really want to do? How can I be of service? And I knew that I had some abilities as a communicator, so I thought I'd be a teacher. Now, okay, long story made short, here I am, but the understanding that if we can find a way to turn our dharma into service, this is the highest that we can do with our life, is how do we take the skills that you've been born with, the capacity that you have, and turn it not only into a way to make money for your own self, which is fine, but also a way to serve the world around you, to make the place a little better when you leave it. This is the idea of how to fulfill our lives. So, we want to try to contribute to the whole. We do the worldly duty without attachment to the fruits of your actions and keep the mind on the divine. If we do this, we don't have to have those crazy thoughts, the negative thoughts, the what about me, the poor me, I'm a victim, and all of these things that come with our modern lifestyle. So we turn that outward desire into desire for union with the divine. If again you can be the same in success and failure, some of these things I'm recycling so that you hear them more than once. But what I want you also go now more into is the karma idea. The karma ends when you are unattached to the fruits of your action. So we talked about the bank account. Yes, good karma, bad karma, and we want to try to bring it to zero. Well, that's very hard to do. But one of the easiest ways to stop creating karma is this whole system of karma yoga by being detached from the fruits of your actions. Because if you are not attached to the fruits of your actions, you are having a different intention. And remember, it's your intention just as much as your action that creates the karma. So the karma ends when you are unattached to the fruits of your actions. This, according to the teachings, is the easiest path of self-realization. The easiest path to the highest state of consciousness is through selfless service. It's not about meditation. It's not about pranayama. You're all working in life. You're all acting. If you can set your intention each day to serve someone other than yourself, this is the fastest, easiest path to reach a higher state. So, every time you are doing selfless service, you're purifying. And we talked about how the whole science is purifying the body, energy, emotions, and mind. So every time you do karma yoga, you're purifying. And you become is like the instrument or the channel. And I often feel this way when I teach a yoga class, that it's not Jason's ego talking. Somehow these words are flying through, this message is coming through, and it's nothing that I have ever thought that I would say. And it's a beautiful feeling to step the ego back a little bit and realize that the universe is flowing through you. The universe is actually guiding you. If you just get out of the way, your ego, then everything will happen the way it's supposed to. The profound plan and purpose of creation is not simply to know God, but literally to become one with God. And this is a quote out of the Bhagavad Gita. So, when we start to do this, we see the divine in all beings. The divine is the source of consciousness in all beings, and the divine supports and sustains this entire universe. Now, continuing with a few more quotes, Krishna says to Arjuna, "Nothing exists separate from my divinity," meaning there's nothing that is not God. Now, we talked about Maya a little bit yesterday, the illusion that the world is real. Why is it an illusion? Okay, here's the teaching from the Bhagavad Gita about Maya. According to this, the world seems real, but everything is in constant change, yes? This wood is already different than it was a minute ago, because through the passage of energy and different influences from the external environment, everything is in constant flux. Everything is in constant transition. But what is real is the unchanging consciousness, the absolute reality, the Atman, or the soul. So this is the teaching of how to discern between that which is constantly in transition, or the unreal, the Maya, the illusion, and that which is eternally perfect and blissful. So this is the discrimination that comes. The Maya is literally created by your ego. You believe that you are separate because of your ego. You think that there's me and there's a you. So your ego is what is responsible for creating this dream. Whatever occupies your attention throughout your life will determine the consciousness for your next life. So this teaching is helping you to understand that what you do in this life is going to set up your next life. This is karma. This is reincarnation. Now, whatever you focus on in this life, that's going to create your next life. So what are you focusing on? And what would you like your next life experience to be? If you believe in this, of course. But this idea of where your consciousness is present, especially at the time of death, this is going to determine your next birth. Now, if you look at the movie Gandhi, it's a 3-hour movie, it's an incredible story. Has anybody seen the movie Gandhi? Wow, this is one of the best movies that I've ever seen. And I can honestly say that as a yogi, we should all see this movie, because he didn't do asana, but he was one of the greatest yogis in recent history. And at the time of death, when he was shot, he was murdered in a crowd, the last word he said was, "Oh God." Because the thought that we have in our consciousness at the time of death plays a major part in where we go in the next birth, in the next incarnation. So one of the trainings of yoga is to train for death, to prepare. And I talked about meditation on your own death. Because if you get to the point where you're losing your life and you're not prepared, and you start freaking out and going into fear or anger, it's a very low vibration. And that's going to create a different experience into the next incarnation or the next reincarnation if you leave this life in a state of fear. So this is why yoga helps us to prepare even for the point of death. Now, the humans are getting what they seek. what your consciousness focuses on is what you attract into your life. Whatever you do in this world, if we offer it to the divine, this is the path that helps us to surrender the ego attachments to the fruits of the action and to free yourself from suffering and karma. So all of us would like to be free of suffering. That's the most obvious statement in the world. We all would like to be free of suffering. If we cultivate this karma yoga in our lives, it's one of the paths to alleviate the suffering. That's what I really want to share with you. There is a way out. Buddha said there is suffering, but the good news is there is a way out. So yoga, this is the yoga way. This is a yoga way out. If you give up your attachment to your body and know that you are the soul, know that you are the Atman. This is not an easy thing to do. I know this. And it takes a certain level of maturity in your evolutionary process. However, what you start to realize is that you are watching the game of your life. You are watching your movie. And I keep bringing this up. It's just a play of consciousness within your awareness. And although this seems very real, when you go into some moments that the mind is still for just a second, it all becomes so clear. I can't really put it into words. I wish I could. But this is why we're here, my friends, is to find this answer. All right. So, according to these teachings, the goal of life is to use the world to reach divinity. Everything that you experience can be a tool to help you wake up. It could be an opportunity to learn more about yourself and learn more about unconditional love. So try not to get yourself too entangled in the Maya, in the illusion, in the dream. All are born for perfection. We are all evolving back to perfection. It just depends how slow or how fast you want to go. Tantra says this is the fast track. You want to awaken in this lifetime and fulfill your perfection or experience your perfection? Here's the instruction manual. Because this is where you're going anyway. It's your destiny. We are all perfect. We're just forgetting. Yes? Shannon, you didn't have a hand? I saw Valeria.
Yeah. So we have to be reborn again and again until we, let's say, get it.
Okay, that's a good way to say it.
And but what if we, let's say, we destroy this world in the Maya and cannot be reborn? What happens?
These are good questions. The fact is there are multiple levels of reality. This is one level. So if it happens that this world gets destroyed, there will be other planes of existence for the souls to go to continue their process of evolution. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right. So once you do your Dharma, this is what's going to lead yourself to your perfection. So there is no greater harm than failure to follow your inner truth. I don't want you to raise your hand. I don't want you to answer me. Are you following your inner truth? Are you following your highest calling? Are you following the calling of your heart and soul? And if you're not, can you feel that you are suffering as a result of not listening to the voice of your heart? So Krishna tells Arjuna, be the instrument that you were born to be. Remember, you are not the body. He says you are the soul. The sword cannot cut it, the water cannot wet it, the wind cannot dry it, the fire cannot burn it. You will never change. So go, enjoy the movie, play your role, have fun, do the best you can, and then realize that you will be leaving that body just as perfect as ever. So there's no need to fear. Observe, understand what you really are, and the suffering will come to an end. Those who teach the truths will definitely come to me. That's what he's saying. And this is one of the important parts of understanding the depth of what it means to be a yoga teacher. So you have probably come into some teachings in this course that you may not have experienced before with regards to yoga, especially the spiritual aspects. If you came into yoga like I did for a purely physical practice, and then suddenly somebody starts telling you about this big story of illusion and Maya and Purusha and Prakriti, and whoa, it seems like a lot to swallow and to accept. So I'm not asking you to accept any of this. All I'm asking you to do is do your practice, and all else will come to you. That's the source of your information. That's the source of your answers, is your yoga practice going inside. Now, this is the yoga for the modern world, because you are acting. You have to act. So what can you do? Action is superior to inaction. This is what Krishna tells Arjuna. You can't just call it quits and go sit on the sideline and watch the battle. This is not an opportunity for inaction. So we do our detachment and consecration. Now these are some quotes from some different masters and from the Bhagavad Gita to finish the talk today. When performed without attachment, the action becomes an easy way to obtain the real goal in life, which is communion with God. An easy way, right? It's not easy to go through Costa's class every day and try to reach enlightenment. But if you do your actions with the consecration and detachment, you don't have to do chaturanga. Okay. Through detached activity, the human being can get where the Buddha got only through meditation and Jesus through love and prayer. Does this make sense to you? All you need to do is act in a certain way. Offer your life to the greater good and you will be lifted up. Now, I know this is easier said than done. I would love to do this in every moment, but my ego is still there and it still plays tricks. The detached activity is very often the only necessary instrument for union with the master of creation. Okay? So there's no more excuses. Right? There's always a yoga for everybody. Now, some people will say, I can't do it on the mat, but your work can become your yoga. The way you serve your family can become your yoga. The way you help others is your path of yoga, karma yoga. There are many, many different translations, many commentaries. One that I like very much, it's coming out of order here. Where did that go? Anyway, one more quote, then the book. The state which the performance of the action is free of desire is the way which easily leads to enlightenment. Easy, 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 okay? It's very hard to get there, so let's take the easy way. Turn your life into an offering. Now, my favorite book, there are many, many translations, many commentaries, and some of them are super thick and very heavy and hard to get through. This one is the easiest one I've ever found. It's called the Bhagavad Gita, a Walkthrough for Westerners. And the other one that I wanted to recommend for the Yoga Sutras is this one by Swami Satchidananda. So if you're looking for a text to start reading that's accessible for a beginner in yoga, these are the two that I found over the years of researching that have been for my favorites and the best for beginners that I found. Now, that's it for this. And the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. And I'll bring in a copy of that so we can look at it. But the other excuse that people comes up with, I don't have time for yoga. Well, there's a solution to that. It's called Yoga Nidra or lucid dreaming. So there's always a time to focus on your evolution, to focus on your union with something greater than yourself. Okay? Any questions about the Bhagavad Gita? I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I want you to read it. I want you to figure out. I'm not going to give the plot away. This is not a spoiler alert. Is there a documentary? Where are the cliff notes, man? So there are movies made about the Bhagavad Gita, for sure. There are some good ones. But what I really recommend is checking out the Gandhi movie and get an understanding of how tremendous this human being was. Because his book that he read every day, what he considered, literally as he said, what I consider my Bible is the Bhagavad Gita. This is the teaching that helped him to stay on that path of service, because he turned his life into an offering. Okay. If there's no questions, then I'm going to go into another topic that I was going to start tomorrow, but we can start today, okay? Just to get you going on something new. We've got a few more minutes. So I'm going to introduce something that's crazy to you, because I want to have fun with you a little bit today. All right. So after today, we're down to the last two lectures. Tomorrow is the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and on Thursday is the Tantra lecture, about the lecture on Tantra on Thursday. Because it's a sensitive topic about sexuality, if anybody doesn't want to be in a lecture about sexuality, therefore the lecture is optional. It's not mandatory that you attend. So if you don't feel like that's a topic that you want to be involved in studying here at Vikasa, you don't have to attend. We're not going to force you into that. So that's Thursday. But
Friday is the Q&A.
Friday is the Q&A, and I really recommend let's take advantage of that opportunity, because whatever you had, if you need some resolution, that's a good time to go into it. And if you don't feel like asking in front of the group, that's okay. You can ask me later. Okay? So what I want to talk about today is one of the kriyas. What's a kriya? Purification technique. And this one is a heavy-duty hitter. This is called Shanka Prakshalana. And this is something I do a few times a year, and I can't imagine living without it now that I've done it. Same thing as did anybody try? Somebody did say to me this morning, Chris tried the tongue scrape, the eye wash, the salt in the mouth, and then washing the nose, which, unless you have the pot, might be a little challenging. So I saw a few hands pop up. What was your experience this morning? Okay. You can't live without it, right? Chris, what did you say about what was coming off your tongue this morning?
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
Anybody else's experience? Gabriel?
I usually always have tea right when I wake up.
Yeah.
After I did it, I didn't have the need to have tea.
Okay, good. Anybody else? I saw another hand. Shannon?
I just snort the water through the tap and it didn't work.
Okay. Okay, that's good. That means you haven't had practice snorting anything. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah. It was good. Yeah. So she was about to get sore throat. What did you do? All four of them, or just one? All four. So feel like she was getting sore throat. Did the techniques in the night before. The next morning you felt better, right? Because these germs are being trapped on the tongue and in the nasal passage. So the more we do this each day, the more we keep ourselves at a higher level. Did anybody feel more awake right after they did it? Like suddenly you're just clear. So if you haven't done it, listen, it's not just Jason up here trying to make you do some crazy experiment. Other people have done it. You can do it too and see how it feels.
Washing the eyes felt really nice after
Yeah.
waking up.
So the washing of the eyes should be cooler water, and the water that you put through the nose should be body temperature, ideally. If it's not, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal, but it feels
I didn't
nicer.
have a little pot, so I was just like pouring it out, like trying to, it was a mess.
Well, once you go home, it's easy to find a neti pot. They're in most health food stores, okay?
Can you find that tongue scraper here?
Yeah, there's different places. Sometimes in 7-Eleven they have plastic ones. That's where I grabbed mine.
Okay,
They have metal ones as well, with little rubber handles. There's all kinds of fancy ones these days. In India you go, they have a copper one, and it's just the cheapest possible variation, and you just use that, and it turns colors, and you're wondering why you're running it over your tongue after a couple
I
days.
was gonna actually ask you
That's
about
why I don't use that
the
one.
metals, using
Yeah.
metal on your tongue, because I actually have a plastic one at home. But like I was thinking like the spoons, like is there any metals that you wouldn't?
No, they're okay.
No, it's all good.
I mean, yeah, if you're using a spoon, that's safe. There's no there's no spoons made out of dangerous metals.
You mentioned the copper, so I was just
So Shanka Prakshalana literally means the purification of the conch shell, and the conch shell is symbolism for the intestines. So this is a very powerful purification technique because in our intestines, there are things that don't belong there. After however many years you've been alive, no matter what kind of diet you have, things get left in the intestines that shouldn't be there because the body isn't a perfect machine. Sometimes it has problems digestion and eliminating all the things that should get out. And so they get stored in the walls of the intestines. And the walls of the intestines are porous and they're convoluted. They have many wrinkles. So it's very easy for things to get trapped in the intestines. And by doing colonics, where you actually push water into your anus and then let it come back out, that is one way of cleansing part of the intestine, the last part, the colon. But it's not cleansing the rest of the intestine. So by drinking salt water that's about body temperature, a certain amount of salt, you keep drinking it until it builds up a pressure. And then you do exercises after each cup to help push the water through the intestines. Then eventually it starts to push out the other end, takes out the solid material, which comes out first, which is natural. When you go to the toilet, you release solid material through your bottom. Then after that, you keep drinking water, keep doing the exercises, and eventually it starts to push the water through the intestines and it starts to clean everything out that's in the intestines. One of the major sources of illness are the things that are rotting inside of our intestines. So the more that we can keep that part of our body clean and pure, the more it will impact the rest of our health. So did you do it with us in the group? So we actually did it together as a group, and I'll never do it again. talk about bonding experience, okay? We're all in here, we've got hot water, I'm like a bartender at the Shankaprakshalana bar. So people come up, I pour them their glass of water, they drink it, they do their 4 exercises, and they keep drinking until they run to the bathroom. And then they come back and they keep drinking, and they gotta run to the bathroom. And some of them only get a few steps out of the toilet before they gotta go back in. So you keep drinking until the water eventually comes out clear. And then you know you've cleansed your intestines. And then you have to have a very specific diet. At least the 24 hours before, there's a specific diet. And generally 48 hours to 1 week to 1 month after the technique, there's another diet to follow so that you bring in the healthy pH level and the healthy bacteria back into the intestines, okay? So what I want to do, I'm not gonna necessarily go through the whole process with you, but what I want you to understand is that even if you don't do this, colonics are at least something beneficial to help cleansing this part of the body. So I know that when I do this technique, literally after I do it, I look in the mirror, my eyes are shining white. My breath is better, my body smells better because you've released a lot of things that are stuck inside that are literally rotting and decaying in your body because they're trapped in the intestines. So you'll notice the skin gets clear, your mind gets sharper, all of these things. And you can do it, it's recommended twice a year at the change of the seasons, maybe at the spring and fall equinox. Those are 2 good times as the energy of the universe is in flux, is in shift from one season to the next. That's a good time to clean the house, we say, spring cleaning, get the stuff out, and then start the next season with a fresh body. Yes?
So I want to do this so bad.
Okay.
But I tend to
Vomit.
I tend to vomit it
Yeah.
up when I drink salt water, so
Yes.
I'm afraid that I just can't get it there for long enough to do these exercises before I puke it up. So Gabe mentioned that there was a place that we could go to that was more like the tube, up the butt kind of situation. I was wondering how you felt about that.
So the colonics up the butt, as you say, it does have its place and it does help. But as I'm saying, this cleanses the whole intestine rather than just the end, which the colonics only gets there. And if we tend to use colonics, if there's a chance of using it too much, you can actually, because of the water pressure, you can create a stretching of the colon. So it's not very healthy from that perspective. What you need to do, I wouldn't do this alone the first time, because the first time you do it, you start getting sweaty and hot and nauseous, and a lot of people, not a lot, there are people who vomit because you're drinking salt water, and those who are sensitive, they throw it up, and then you got to start over again and try again. In fact, we've had people do it here in the training when we do it together. But what we need to do is find a teacher or someone who's done it before to guide you through the process the first time. But guys, this is something that I will do for the rest of my life, twice a year or more, because of how amazing I feel. And not just in the body, but also really the mind. I notice it affects my meditation. So cleansing this part is something that whether you've done a colonic before or not, we all need to clean this part of our body. Okay? Yogis have been doing this for thousands of years. They figured out that although this system is quite good, it's not perfect. So it needs some assistance from ourselves to make sure we clean it out. Okay, Mirta. Yes?
How long does this take in terms of hours?
So the first time it took me about 4 hours, and I've heard of people taking 6 hours, but now it takes me an hour. So once you cleanse it, once you know how to go through the process, it becomes quite easy.
When are you done? When it's like,
When it's almost totally clear and there's nothing coming out. What's that?
does it hurt?
No, it doesn't hurt, but it can be uncomfortable because you get nauseous, your belly gets really bloated before you start having the water come out the other side.
What? Not newspaper or anything.
Don't use toilet paper each time you go to the bathroom. Make sure you use water to clean yourself, otherwise it'll be very chafed and raw, to be honest. Okay? So I did take a group of, I don't know how many people did it that day. It was 16 to 17, and we all did it together here. We used the bathrooms here, and all the people that were staying in the rooms close by. How- now, for a few hours. No, a few hours. But the rest of the day after the technique, you have to chill out. You're not going anywhere far from the toilet, because if you sneeze, you could have an accident. Okay, so you have to be cautious, and the rest of the day the whole day is devoted to this process. You don't have freedom later to go dancing, okay? You need to relax. Also, you'll feel quite tired after this because you've depleted your energy, you've gone through a heavy purification, so the next day or two you might feel a little bit off, and you have to eat a very specific diet, and you can go online very easily, look up Shankar Prakshalana and find the guidelines of how to do this. And then after about 2 days after having done it, you start to feel the benefits of it. So the first time is very challenging for everybody, and I was thinking of quitting. You know, my belly was this big and nothing was coming out, and I was wondering if I was going to explode at any moment. So, and the funny thing was, I did it with my new girlfriend. I've never done Shankar Prakshalana alone. I've always done it with my girlfriend at the time. And it's a very bonding experience. If you can poop together, you can pretty much make it through anything together. Okay? So I'm not saying this is something I recommend, but if you're close enough to your partner and feel like going even closer, this is something that you can try together. Okay? Yes?
Yeah, so do you use hot water with like pure salt or
Okay.
because my mom she's done it so many times
Okay.
that she would take the water from the ocean, but as you said yesterday, it's not clean.
What's recommended is pure water with pure salt, either rock salt or sea salt, yeah.
No, because he used to say that the layer is not the top layer, not the bottom layer, the middle layer. You have to swim very far. He used to let my dad swim very deep in the ocean and then
To get, okay.
and then get the water bottle from the middle layer.
the top as you're going to the middle, or do you like top and then like
Close it, then go middle layer, open the bottle.
That is an option. I haven't done it that way.
I did try.
Yeah.
I had a glass of that water
Yeah.
and I went straight away to the toilet and I was like, okay, this is it. I can do it.
It's very intense, guys, the first time. This is why you need guidance. I want to introduce this topic to you so that you are aware of it, because tomorrow when we go into the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, one of the main of the 4 chapters, one chapter is all about purification techniques. And this is one that I do consistently because of the power and the efficacy, the ability for it to really have a deep impact on your whole system. So if you want to do it, you can talk to me more about it. I will answer questions now, but if you want to do it at some point, we'll find a way. You need to find a way to do it because it does help you in the long run. So
if not you,
yeah,
how do I go about finding my poop mentor?
your poop mentor. Swami Poopananda. Swami Poopananda usually can be found at yoga schools. You know, somebody who's done yoga for a long time, and say, you can put a sign, I'm looking for a Shankar Prakshalana mentor on your chest. I don't know. But usually, you know, yoga schools, that's where the yogis are. So that would be my first place to find a mentor, Mr. Poopananda.
I mean, what a great way to start a friendship.
Yeah.
The
George.
Himalayan salt, is that fine too?
Yep.
Is that nothing to show?
Yep. Himalayan salt is fine, rock salt, sea salt, as long as it's pure and not have any iodine added to it. Okay.
And warm water or?
Yeah, so it should be at least body temperature, maybe even a little bit warmer.
Never mind, I'm not-
And basically you put a teaspoon of salt per liter of water. You mix up a bunch of liters of water, you drink the cup, and after each cup you do exercises to get the water moving through. So the first you do this, you start moving to the side, then you do this, you get it to the side, then you come down here and you look over each shoulder and you do this, and then you come to the last one to push it all the way through and you squeeze. And then you run to the toilet, okay?
Those are the only 4?
Those are the only 4 you need to do. And after each cup, you drink a cup, you do the exercises, you drink another cup, and you just keep going until it starts to happen.
So you don't down 2 liters at once?
No, no.
Moderate.
Slowly. If you remember, it's salt water. If you drink all that, you're going to vomit it up right away. Okay. So Valeria.
Are you fine on the next day? So it's something for Sunday and to go to work on Monday?
So on your first time doing it, the next day is pretty challenging because you feel a little headachy, maybe a little like fatigued.
But not on the toilet anymore.
No, you're not on, you don't have to sit by the toilet the next day. By the end of the day you've done it, you do it first thing in the morning. You know, you don't eat any food at all. You don't drink anything. You just start your day with this process and then hang out the rest of the day. Do not take a nap. The diet is extremely important. So you have to eat after the meal a very strict diet of either cooked lentils or dal or what's called khichdi, which we have up here in the mornings sometimes, or really well cooked rice. And you're taking that in with a lot of ghee, which is clarified butter, because that lubricates the intestines. After you've stripped everything off the intestines, you need to re-lubricate it with something that's beneficial. So ghee is considered the most beneficial lubricant out of the yoga science, and ghee just means clarified butter, where you heat the butter until the impurities rise to the surface, and then you get the pure good stuff that's left, and that's what the Indians use as a form, and they call that ghee spiritual sperm. They think that that is like the most energetic food source that exists. So it's something that has a lot of potency according to the yoga science. Yes?
Is it the same than when you're gonna get a colonoscopy? You have to like drink some kind of little pills. Have you heard about that?
No, I don't know so much about it. I know when people have to get surgery the next day sometime and they have to do what you're talking about, but I don't know.
You have to drink some kind of fiber or I don't know what. And then, yeah, you drink a lot of.
Well, this is different, obviously, because you keep drinking until everything is cleared out. And it's actually, it can take several hours the first time because you might have blockages in there. You might have things that are impacted in blocking the flow. So the first time, that's why I say it could take anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, but now it only takes an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes at maximum. You just get the water in and out and you're ready to go. Okay. Any other questions? I saw another hand up, I thought. Yeah.
I was just going to share that I started doing this because I got really bad food poisoning in Hong Kong when I came there a few months, and I just wasn't getting better with anything. And the Nepalese helper told me to just drink salt water for a day, and that was the only thing that made me better. So I usually do it once a quarter because I'm always having stomach problems in
Good.
Hong Kong, and it's sometimes the only thing that works. And
Good.
afterwards I'll have probiotics and broth, and then it's sort of gone.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. Has anybody else tried it?
I want to try it.
Just now.
I've done with honey and apple cider vinegar before, which goes straight through you as well, but it
Okay.
doesn't.
Well, it won't clear the whole system. It might get the more of the solid material out, but you want to get even cleaning the walls, the little particles.
What you're saying with the salt sounds
Yeah.
pretty intense. And next question on terms of
Yeah.
the salt. When I did that with putting it on your gums and then taking it off, I found it a little harsh in my mouth.
It's pretty strong.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I've also used, by keeping coconut oil in my mouth before.
That's
and
oil
told-
pulling. It's different.
Oil pulling? That's why I'm wondering. What's the difference?
Oil pulling is another Ayurvedic tradition. You guys have heard about oil pulling, perhaps, or not? So it's putting a pure oil in your mouth, a cold-pressed, natural, organic oil in your mouth. Usually either coconut oil, sunflower oil, sesame oil. Those are the top 3 that are recommended. And you swish it around in your mouth for 15 minutes about, and it draws toxins out through the mucous membrane in your mouth. It whitens your teeth at the same time, gives you fresh breath, etc. So if you do that every day, it's another purification process. So each morning you do that while you're doing other stuff. It's called oil pulling because you're literally like pushing and pulling the oil in and out through your teeth with the action of your cheeks, and that helps to draw the toxins out. Then you spit it out, you rinse your mouth out, and you go on your way. So this is another great purification technique that can be done daily.
Would I be able to swap out the salt with that, or is the salt still
The salt,
in its own right?
they're different, and I would say the oil pulling is actually deeper cleansing. And it takes longer, so it goes deeper and you go deeper into the system. The salt is more the superficial drawing of the toxins out from just the mouth, whereas oil pulling can pull it out through the bloodstream somehow into the mouth, yeah. I don't know exactly how it works, and in fact, I haven't read anywhere yet how it works biologically, but anyway, it does.
I tried it for a while.
Yeah.
It was great.
Everybody I know who has done it says they really feel like it benefits them. So that's another thing to try, and we'll go more into some more purification techniques tomorrow. So Daniela?
If you have problems with your gum going up,
Yeah.
does that hurt? Because my
Oil pulling can be excellent for that.
okay.
Definitely. So if I were you, I'd make an experiment, try it for at least a month, and then see if you notice a difference. But it's been recommended by a lot of modern alternative medicine to work with inflammation of the gums as well, and it really does work.
It has to be eatable oil, right?
It has to be edible, yeah. You don't want to put non-edible oil into your mouth. Okay, any other questions about Shankar Prakshalana? I just put it out there for you guys. You're gonna have to, I can't do it again with you here because the next day everybody was too tired to practice and we lost a day almost. And so it's a hard thing to do in the middle of a training with all the other intense things that are happening right now. But I really would hope that all of you start putting this into your life as well, in addition to those 4 morning techniques that only some of you have tried. So the rest of you make an experiment and see what happens. You already heard that it feels good, so if you want to feel good, give it a try. It's easy.
We can all do a Skype session.
We could all have a Skype Shankar Prakshalana session all together, a conference call. Okay, let's ohm it out. Come on back into your comfortable seat, please. Okay, let's bring the hands together in front of the heart and close our eyes. Let's just take one deep, relaxing breath, let it all go. And deep inhale. Of gratitude for the teachings of yoga. The divine light in me loves the divine light in you. Namaste.
Namaste.
And thank you all very much for listening today. Sure.